Good day, everybody. It is my pleasure to come to you today at Purelite Ventures Presents. Today, our webinar is going to be on artificial intelligence in healthcare venture. And we are pleased to have Daren Fields, a founder and value architect on AI, to join us today. Now, I would like to tell you a little bit about what Daren has been doing. So a he is a value architect and also a CTO. He specializes in AI-driven business transformation for manufacturers and industrial leaders. He's also very involved in technology-driven enterprises. His background is in operational efficiency, AI enablement, and go-to-market strategy. Daren will help with organizations who need leveraging of AI and machine learning, automation, and digital transformation to accelerate growth and improve productivity, enhancing competitive positioning, which is extremely important in these days where venture capitalists are always looking for companies that can move faster and build smarter using AI. He also is an advisor to equity-backed portfolio companies and manufacturing firms in the healthcare enterprise. Daren works closely with leadership teams to bridge the gap between AI strategy and execution. He focuses on AI adoption at every single level, from the executives to the frontline employees, and he ensures that organizations not only integrate AI, but also empower their teams to use it more effectively. So please welcome Daren to Purelite Ventures Presents. Welcome, Daren.
Hello, and thank you for having me. I'm sorry I had you read all that stuff. I got a lot of stuff to do. Oh my goodness! But yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on here, and it's an honor to be talking to folks that are in my wheelhouse. People that have to build businesses, grow businesses, start businesses, etc. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, this is going to be very exciting, and I mean, we know that AI has been around for quite a while. But it seems that right now is the time that most people are beginning to see how valuable it is. And so since you're on the forefront of this, we are super excited to have you share your ideas and your thoughts about how this is going to grow and change our ecosystem. There are a couple really interesting things that you shared with me that I think are fantastic in terms of AI. You've been able to increase production in the startups that you've helped by 30%. You've cut operational overhead by 20% using AI as well. You've helped companies build their own private AI ecosystems. Now, this is fantastic because there's a lot of fear, I think, that's around protecting data. So I think this is going to be a seminar or a webinar that we are actually going to want to go over our time because there's so much to unpack.
It happens a lot, so it's a hot topic. It's a hot topic.
It is a hot topic. And a few of the things that come to mind for me would be earlier and more accurate diagnosis when it comes to AI, treatment plans that are more personalized, drug discovery, robotic surgeries, and streamlining administrative tasks. So I'm looking forward to diving into some of those things in a few minutes. But first, I would like to actually also ask you why you gravitated towards working in machine learning and AI, and what inspires you to continue to be active in this space.
Well, thank you for that question because it's a good one. The reality of it is that you're right. AI has been around a long time. I mean, OpenAI started its journey in 2015, right? So, and then before that, there was lots of folks and colleagues that were working on it. But OpenAI and ChatGPT basically democratized it. It opened up to the world. They basically turned the tool around and gave it to people. But What got me into it was actually an engagement with a manufacturer, a gentleman by the name of Joe Andrulis, who's somebody that I highly value his opinion on. But we had just met, we were talking, and we were at dinner. And after the meal and a little bit of wine, he leaned in and he said, "Daren, what are you doing with AI?" And I was in the middle of an engagement. We were trying to get a project for ERP and a bunch of other technical things. And my company had, this is in 2023. And I said, "Oh, we have AI. Da, da, da." I said, stop. I'm not talking about the sales pitch. I'm talking about AI. What do you know about AI? Do you know how to work AI? Or what do you know about it? And so he took some time to show me and explain to me what was happening and what was going to happen. He was quite a visionary. And he said, "You're never going to run your businesses the same. You're never going to do your engagements the same. You're never going to sell the same. You're never going to do anything the same. So you need to learn this, and you need to learn this today." So I left that. It took me about 2-3 months to kind of deprogram myself from the old way of thinking and slip into this AI realm. And then I went back to school, took some courses, became a certified prompt engineer. And while I was in there, I learned a ton of the mechanics behind it, what the structure was, how it works. And I started to really see that it's a planetary game changer. So I got to look into the soul of the matrix, if you will, and I got to see how it all works. And then I was hooked from that point on. In class, it was funny. I go back to midterms and grades and all kinds of stuff. It'd been a while, but I took to it, like a duck to water, and I loved it. I've been hooked ever since.
Wow. So what were the biggest takeaways that you got when you spoke with Joe?
Well, the biggest takeaway was that he worked for a family office, right? So he worked for a family office fund that had bought this company, and it was a great company. And he was there to make sure that it grew. He was there to growth hack it. Is really, for those of us in the business, we know what that means, right? And the reality is that he was he's way out front, bottom line. And I was very lucky. Grace of God, the Holy Ghost, being blessed, whatever that is, my friend. It was extremely fortuitous that I met him. And it was extremely fortuitous that he came to dinner that night, because most of the time executives don't go to dinner. But there was a lot of things that happened that made it a bit of a miraculous moment. And he knew what he wanted, and he knew how to get there. And he was a visionary. He was doing things like the things that we're going to talk about today. He was doing things like handing subscriptions to ChatGPT to key people. And he started teaching them right then and there, before any systems were in, before anything new and fancy was in. He just had his team started, and it was awesome. It was awesome to watch, period. End of story. And now looking back, it's quite brilliant. And, I'm going to steal like an artist and say, that's one of the key successful actions. So thank you, Joe. Thank you.
I love the way you give credit where credit is due. First to the Holy Ghost, and then to Joe. I love that. So then, just really briefly, can you tell us what AI is and machine learning is actually?
Yeah, to keep it basic, it really is a computer. It really is. But it's a neural network of computers, and it's an emulation of the human brain is what it is. To keep it simple. So when we look at it, when we look at a neural network, and we look at calculations and language, and we look at all of the things that make humans great, it's basically a electronic equipment version of our brain. And our brains actually are superior to it. So everybody relax just for a second. But the bottom line is it's a neural network of computers that work together. And it's a massive database. And it is a trained model, which means that a GPT is a trained model, a generative, trained model. And you set it up on the hardware, you get it going, and then you start training it. And it's a large language model, so lots and lots of language goes into it. Now, what happens in the background is that there's a process called vectoring. And vectoring puts value on every syllable and every letter that you speak. And it puts a score to it. And again, trying to keep this simple, what it does is it uses a lot of math and a lot of science to communicate with all of us. And it's an amazing tool because it's basically digitized thought, to keep it simple.
So you bring me to this interesting segue where many people feel as though AI is going to take their jobs, remove them from the workforce, and they're kind of afraid of it. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts about that, Daren?
Well, the reality of it is it's not going to be AI that takes your job, quotes in the air. It's going to be another human that knows AI that takes your job.
Wow.
And this is the story that I've been telling for the last 2 weeks, is that if I give an AI tool to one person and give an AI tool to another, we're going to get different results. And so I have highly recommended people that they become an AI practitioner. Now, that is it's a different term and different levels and different meanings, but think about it this way. Think about if I took two carpenters, I met them on the street and I gave them, we went into a hardware store. I won't do any branding. I went into a hardware store and I gave them the same hammer, the same tools, the same tool belt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I put one in one house and one in another. And I said, go ahead and remodel the kitchen. And then you and I, we go in and we walk in and we look at it. We're going to see differences. We're going to see differences in the production and the finished work and the detail. And there's going to be one that's going to be better than the other. And so the reality of it is that AI is a tool and it's a utility. It's a level of IT that you've got to start to get familiar with in some way, shape, or form. And then what you've got to be able to do is move that hammer around your business, around your company, around your startup, so that it produces a beautifully remodeled kitchen. That's the secret to AI. It's not going to take your job. And as far as science fiction goes, we've got the Terminator, we've got all these things. I understand. Yeah. But the reality of it is the science fiction movie, or the movie that you want to be most concerned about and locked in on around AI, is iRobot. Because iRobot goes back to the ethics of humans who run that company that makes those robots. The ethics points are there. So couple key things that I would say about AI is there are no more secrets. And if you want to keep a secret, you're going to have to privatize your data. That's the one thing. But since there's no more secrets, then you're really going to want to do the following things. You're going to want to never do anything for free. You're going to always want to understand physics. There's only so much that certain things can do. And you're going to want to live life ethically. And if you want to get into AI, and if you want to understand what it is, you're going to have to understand that you've got to come pure. You got to get into it. You got to start realizing that there are no more secrets, and you have got to get your hands on the lever that controls the ability to extract true data out of the information that you're dealing with. There's a whole other story behind that, but iRobot is the one you got to pay attention to. And that's the one you got to look out for. So AI can be a powerful tool. The other thing I say to people that makes them feel good is that we all know Iron Man and we know how he works, right? Mm-hmm. You've got Tony Stark, you've got Jarvis. And for those of you who love Marvel or what have you, you probably have thought about this as well. But it's Tony Stark plus Jarvis that makes Iron Man. So if you study that between iRobot and that, if you study that and get into that social side of it, if you can use your Jarvis, you will make a superhero, which will be you or your company or your department. And that's the secret. Learn how to use and have a Jarvis. But remember, it answers to you.
Wow. That's interesting because when you talk about it, it sort of sounds like Big Brother, right? There are no more secrets.
That's true. That's true. And now there's a thing that's called data bias, and we've seen it, right? Some of us have gone to certain GPTs and we've asked political questions and we haven't gotten the answers. But that's why I tell you that iRobots is the use case or the scenario that you got to watch out for, because the humans still run AI. They still run it. They still run it, and they always will run it.
You know, I was speaking with a friend of mine at dinner once, and she said that the internet was created to build machine learning models for AI, because AI is the pinnacle of what was to be created. And it just came into my mind. I just came into remembrance. Do you have any thoughts about that? I know that like we never discussed this, but I think it's interesting.
Well, I mean, a few things, right? I mean, it's always a sequence of patterns, but you know, networks, getting off a prem, going to the cloud, you know, data curation, data management, data elements. These all things were leading up to AI, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the folks out there knew they had to get there. But, you know, in the background, technology, chips, all of that stuff, 20, 30, 40 years ago, the AI has been a concept for a long time. I mean, they wrote about AI in the Pulp Fiction magazines in the 40s and 50s. So, you know, Marvel, I mean, Iron Man, I mean, all of it, 50s, 60s, 70s, the concept of AI has been around a long time, a duplication of the human brain. And so, but there is a sequence, there is an evolution that has happened, and it has all led to this moment right now. The internet was created for different reasons. I've heard different stories why it was born. But the thing is that the internet solved the problem. And then search engines came along and that solved the problem. And a lot of us really loved it. And it became a verb. Go ahead and Google it, right? I mean, it just did. Good job to Google, you know, the early adopter. Yeah. But now you look at Perplexity. I don't know if anybody's seen Perplexity. I don't know if you played with Perplexity. But Perplexity is the next kind of layman's version of ChatGPT. It's the next version of Claude, meaning that it's really an application that sits over the top. There's a couple of other pieces inside of it. But what Perplexity does is it's an app, and it looks at all of the LLMs. It looks at ChatGPT. It looks at, it doesn't look at Claude because Claude is very secure. It won't let you look at it, but Gemini or all of those. And the point is when you go to Perplexity, it's really an AI-driven research tool. And so this stuff is evolving very, 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 very fast. And if we look at all of the development stages through history, it took hundreds of years for this, and then it took 100 years for that, then it took a decade for that. We're down, ladies and gentlemen, we're down to just days and weeks. That's really where we're at, and that's how fast this thing's flying. So to answer your question, cloud, all of these things led to this moment, but definitely all part and parcel of a cascading effect of technology being developed as fast as it could.
Great. And I love the way you started talking about the different tools. You talked about Perplexity, Claude, and I know we spoke about Lovable and different things like that. And remember you talked about the place for each one of those things. And so I would be curious about that in terms of what you would do for healthcare startups that were interested in incorporating AI.
Yeah, couple things. Number one, this past weekend, I was fortunate enough to be around some very successful entrepreneurs, digital folks. You know, they'd started platforms like Zeus and BookDaddy.com and all of these things. But it wasn't really about that. It was about startups, and it was about getting things rolling and building business. And Terry McMahon was talking about how you don't want to take old processes with this new technology, especially this new technology, but you don't want to do old processes with any new technology. And, you know, I think for a lot of us starting in 23, and some of you in the audience, but even before that, the point is that we don't want to do a startup in healthcare the way you used to do it. That's the first thing I'll say. The other thing I'll say is a fundamental thing for startups and people who have a great idea. I've sat in some recent startups and angel fund sessions, and I saw all kinds of cool medical stuff. Really, really neat testing capabilities and so on and so forth. And the reality of it is that they're going to need help in starting it up, getting commercialized, and there's a lot of things, as you all know, that go into a business. I'm not going to lie, it's not easy to start your own company. But then you got to add the extra element of commercializing the business before it's a business. And there's a term that I coined over the weekend as I was being approached by lots of different startup folks, Bitcoin and all these things. And it was just like, wow, this is crazy. And they wanted to all know the same question you are all asking, which is, how do I use AI to do it? So the reality is you use AI to start with AI. And that's literally how it works. And so, I'm working with people right now, and I'm showing them the basics and the fundamentals. And you mentioned all of the different platforms. We have this huge explosion of all kinds of applications. Which way to go, what to do. So let's kind of break this down for the medical folks. For medical folks, there's going to be a couple things you're going to want to be aware of. Number one, you can use ChatGPT. If you would show my screen, I do want to show something here. It's very important. So if we look at all of these AI, LLMs, GPT, so on and so forth, you can see I've got ChatGPT Pro on here, Perplexity, Claude, and DeepSeek. They're all slightly nuanced. They're all slightly different. And then look at the security down at the bottom. Just look at that. So you've got better, good, best. Okay. And if you want to know what that means, there you go. Right. There's my legend. But you can see that you have to really start to understand the nuances. Before we go into security, look at the training, look at the data usage, look how that works. So what would I recommend to a medical person? First thing I would recommend is you have a lot of privacy. You have a lot of laws. Now, a guy who runs a pool cleaning company, he can use AI too, but he doesn't have HIPAA and all this stuff. So you guys have got the FDA and all kinds of stuff. So I would recommend to you that you start understanding Claude. Get into it and start doing it. Why? Because it's very, very secure. Why is it so secure? Because everything is very siloed inside of Claude. Each conversation that you start, it doesn't share within another conversation, even within its own private account. So all I'm saying to you is it's very private. It's the best according to my assessment. And it also has an MBA in language. So for example, as you startups, as you get into this, you know that you're going to eventually be running into a doctor that's also an investor or somebody that knows the medical game. They're going to know it. And they're going to know what they're going to spend $80,000 or $150,000. Angel funds tend to be around that range. So they're going to know. So I will tell you this. If you were to go to ChatGPT, or if you were to go to any of the popular ones, Gemini, so on and so forth, and you said, write me a business plan, it's going to write you a layman's business plan. If you go to Claude and you say, write me a business plan, you will be blown away at what you didn't tell it, and it wrote. And it'll put in market values, it'll put in dollars and cents. It's awesome. It's awesome because it has an MBA. One of the things that you want to get used to is that you always want to know and identify and give your prompts the right way to do it, right? So you are an investor, you have to invest in medical. I need you to put your MBA hat on, and I need you to write this as if somebody's going to be able to or ask me questions about giving me $1 million to start my new hearing aid, whatever it may be. And Claude will kick butt, and it'll keep your stuff secret. That's my first recommendation. Now, backing up, there's many layers to AI because remember, AI emulates the human brain, and you know how crazy the human brain gets and all the different things we all do in the human condition. Well, AI is starting to have those same characteristics on a smaller level, but they have. And So for those of you out there right now are going, well, Daren, I don't know how to prompt. I'm not a prompt engineer. I'm not an AI practitioner. I don't know about vectoring. But that's okay. Here's what I would recommend. I would recommend you go to the a better. So I would probably go to ChatGPT Pro, looking at this chart, and I would say, hey, I don't want to be like Daren and eat, sleep, drink, and breathe this stuff. I got to get onto my job, but I want to ask you a question. Can you write me a prompt for Claude on how the best way to write a business plan is? ChatGPT writes it. You take that. It's going to be a good prompt, and then you put that prompt in there. That's the basic, simple way. A lot of us AI practitioners have a lot of trick ways to do it, but that's the one I'm going to tell you. That's the 101 version. You will find I have a 45-inch wide screen for a reason. It's because now that I'm in AI, I am pivoting between different LLMs and GPTs. And I am doing it in a manual way, which we call a swivel chair. Why? Because I work with a lot of very delicate information, just like healthcare, and I cut and paste, and it's all on my desktop. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I could build APIs. I can do all this stuff, and we'll do that. We'll play with that. We'll all get good at that for you guys. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of people that use hammers in different ways, and some people will use it to fix a repair in their house, but they're not going to remodel their kitchen. That's how you're going to do this here. So you're going to use AI, and you will use a couple different ones, and that's the secret. Use one to get to the other, or use what one is. Use your AI tools as you would use a chisel, a hammer, and a nail gun. Well, I don't always use a nail gun because I sometimes got to use a hammer, and sometimes I got to use a hammer where I wouldn't use a nail gun. And you go around and around like that. So my best advice is think about the data. Don't be afraid, because a lot of people are afraid at their jobs and places like that to load data. I understand it's probably a company policy by now. I get it, but just know where your data is going, who's working on it, and what that particular GPT specializes in, because they're all going to start to specialize. They're all going to have nuances. They're all going to have differentiators.
Wow, I love that. That brings a lot to mind, because when you say that Claude has an MBA, and we're looking at the fact that in healthcare, there are so many amazing geniuses working on so many innovations, but they may not have the business acumen, but they do have the product or the MVP. This is very valuable for them.
Yes.
And
that's really the key thing. So Mark Cuban was asked about AI, I don't know, probably a year ago. And the interviewer said, if you were going to college today, what degree would you get? And he said, well, and again, it's a little tongue in cheek. There's certain things you definitely, being a doctor would be one of them, but there's a few things. But he basically said, I don't know why would I get a degree? And then, he realized he was being a bit, chippy there. And he goes, all right, what I mean to say is there's not a lot that I would go get anymore. What he said was, though, I do have one for you. I got one degree that I would recommend. If you're asking me, I'd probably tell him, don't worry about it. Just get back to work and move on. But if there was one thing I was going to tell people to go to school for, it would be liberal arts. And the interesting thing about that statement, at the time, I'm like, I think I kind of know what he's talking about. But now I know exactly what he's talking about. So what he's talking about is the creative side of the liberal arts, right? I remember when we were all in school. Yeah, he's a liberal arts major. Oh, okay. So he doesn't know. He doesn't know what he wants to do in life. Whatever it was, whatever the stigma was of liberal arts, it wasn't fair. It wasn't right. It was terrible. But they tend to be more of the creative types. And when we look at creation and we look at AI and we look at the binary, AI is the matrix. It is binary. You remember the thing in the movie with the screen with all of the ones and zeros? That's AI flying at a gazillion miles an hour. And that's what NVIDIA and all those guys build is a machine that runs those things faster than you couldn't even see them. So the point being that when you look at AI and you look at what you're trying to do with it, how you're trying to drive it, when you're trying to control it, it starts to become a thing where it comes down to creativity, because AI is not very good at judge and jury moments. that's just not. And let me now give me a prime example. So a friend of mine, Shara Hallixer, she calls me 2 days ago and says, I'm so mad at ChatGPT. And I said, what's wrong? And again, she's not an AI practitioner. She wants to get on to helping people with HR and putting in tech and helping people run workforces and everything else and blah, blah, blah. But she knows it's a great tool and it's a great assistant. So she uses it as an assistant. And she said, I asked ChatGPT to make me a logo with no words on it. And it keeps showing up with words. I said, show it to me. And she shows it to me. And you know how AI has these little scribbly things that it's like gibberish? You know how that happens? You ever seen that?
No.
Well, to AI, that's an image. That's not a word. So when she wrote back and said, "You're redo it again. You're putting words in the drawing," and AI came back and said, "I'm not putting words in it." He wasn't. He was putting an image that looked like a word, but it didn't spell anything, and it wasn't a word. It was just a line that looked like a word. And that's the distinction between humans and AI. Right there, right at that moment, we have sense, we have instinct, we have, there was an article I think I posted on LinkedIn for you guys, where a biochemist was talking about, and he dealt with biochemistry and all that. And he talked about cells and muscle memory and intuition, and all that stuff's in there. And it's a whole conversation. And in his article, he wrote why AI will never dominate a human, because they don't have those things. And so that exact same moment that story she gave me was beautiful. I'm like, Shara, to him, it's an image. And she goes, oh. I said, so you got to take that and you got to go give it to a human. And then you can tell the human the aesthetic moments, the art moments, the creative moments, right, the feel, the instinct. It doesn't have those things. It can't do it. It'll make assumptions with the best of them, and it'll emulate that instinct like Claude, write me an MBA paper, but it's copying something else. And so that's the beauty of it, is don't be afraid of AI, just learn how to manage AI, and then watch out for the unethical humans that may get it to do things you don't want it to get it to do. Robots are not going to attack my mountain home. They're not. No. It's going to be somebody telling them to attack my mountain home, and then we'll do an EMP, and I'll send my own robots out, and we'll get it done. But the bottom line is that it's the creativity part. That's the part you got to tap into yourself. And when we talk about what people are reacting to, when we talk about, oh, they're going to take these repetitive jobs. Yes, I admit that, but humans are going to have to go through a change like they've gone through change millions of times before. But 70-80% of it is going to get done, and it's going to stop, and then it's going to turn back to the human. And that's where the people who created it, and now you got the God thing, you got the spirituality thing, you got all that stuff. That's going to be the last 20%. So start figuring out how to not beat them, because you won't, but how to join them.
I love that. Don't try to figure out how to beat them. Figure out how to join them. So
it's coming. It's like oxygen. Technology is like oxygen.
Wow. So that being the case, my next question feeds right into that. So a founder wants to bring AI into their company, into their startup, right? Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of times within VC, we get a lot of founders saying the buzzword, but we don't get founders sometimes who have something that's very actionable. So when do you think, or how do you think a startup should go about integrating this in their startup offering?
So great point. Couple philosophical things to look at and methodologies. Number one, AI in operations versus AI in product development.
Okay.
Because remember, AI, like Joe told me in 2023, everything you know will be changed by AI, but it'll continue in the direction that it's going and just get there faster by AI, right? Mm-hmm. And in his brilliance, what he was saying was, this is a global game changer. It's more than the internet. It's more than the search engine. Those things that you mentioned before were all setups for this moment in time. So What I see a lot of startups doing is they're using AI as a product. They're using AI as something to help them enhance their product. And that's fine. That we all, as entrepreneurs, we tend to do that a lot. But the secret to being an entrepreneur is understanding the operations side of being your own entity, your own business, meaning all of the individual things. So for example, a couple of startups over the weekend came to me and they said, this is my product. And they were very, 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 very product focused. And I'm going to put AI in the product to make it more appealing to the investors. But if you guys all ever watch Shark Tank and you watch Mr. Wonderful, that is not what he's going to spend his time on. He doesn't look at that. What does he look at? He looks at the back office, the infrastructure, the ability to deliver. Now, most of the Shark Tankers are definitely upline from the startups, because the startups get a few pieces of revenue going, $100,000, and then they go on a Shark Tank. So being Shark Tank ready is the goal for all startups. So the key, though, is that when you look at technology and you look at operations, what most investors are going to be looking for is behind the scenes, what it is that you're going to be doing, what it is that you're going to be driving. So for example, I can't tell you the product, but I was in an angel fund meeting, and the gentleman says, or one of the investors says, well, what's the distribution plan? That's operations, guys. And it caught him off guard because, again, I can't even breathe a word of what this thing is because I'm on an NDA. But the brilliance of this product that this man and a couple people had created was so exciting and so bright. And that's where everybody gets really excited. I'm going to change the world. And I love that part. But then the minute the investors step in front of you, they want to know on your operations. Okay, what's your distribution model? What's your supply chain model? What does that all look like? And if they don't hear AI in that design, I'm not investing. I'll tell you that much. And a lot of these guys know that they need to listen at least for the buzzwords. So if you're building a startup, you got to think both sides now. You're going to be an entrepreneur. You got to think both sides. You got to think operationally. So start using AI operationally first. And what that means is start departmentalizing your company and start looking at it and start figuring out what tools you want to use. So for example, let's say patient monitoring. Let's say you've got something for patient monitoring that's revolutionary. And, as my wife says, humans are amazing. They come up with stuff that nobody else has come up with. Well, of course, because it's brand new. But the thing is it's AI-powered tools, analyzing real-time data, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That's the bright idea, right? But here's the question for you. What are you going to do how are you going to use AI? How are you going to use AI to build the operations? How are you going to, what you hear the guys on Shark Tank say things like, well, what's your supplier? What's your model? What's your cost model? What are you paying for that? These are the questions they're asking. But here's the thing. For a lot of startups, they don't want to deal with that. That's fine. Go get AI to do it. Go get Claude to do it. Go say, hey, Claude, I've got this great idea. Again, this is your idea, and you want to put it into Claude. Don't do the free Google thing. That's a whole other story. Please, if you're going to bootstrap, great, but go drive Uber and make $2,000 a month until you build your business, because if you can't do it with zero. But that aside, go ask Claude and say, okay, I need you to help me build a supply chain model for And if you do it in ChatGPT, that's fine. Just when you go to ChatGPT, don't tell it the product. Just say to ChatGPT, I want you to design a prompt for me to do a medical device. Keep your IP out of the damn thing. Keep all of your intellectual property out of your public stuff. But then take that over, edit it real quick, and punch it in. Punch it in. And then, boom, boom, boom. Now, for you guys going into your angel fund meetings or your investor meetings or all of that stuff, if you go into a living room and talk to your uncle about giving you $1 million, go back to your process and go back to your prompts and go back to finishing up that chain of thought and say, I'm going to go do X, and then you need to write this as Y, and I want you to nail it, and then I'm going to go grab a coffee. And then you let AI, your Jarvis, build that superhero moment for you. And then you can put it on slides, you can put it on paper, you can spread that spread that product out. And then when you walk in and you have that moment to make money, because I've seen people blow that moment so many times. When you have that moment to blow it, if you don't blow it because you've used AI to curate everything. And then once you're done with that and you're ready for that, then come back to your product and then go back and forth, go back and forth, go back and forth. And then you can even ask your GPTs. Again, I'm going to say this out loud one more time. Don't do this for free. Don't use the free apps. The free apps have user agreements that say, if you're going to use this particular free app, we can use your stuff. People can argue with me all day. I'm sure Google would. That's not what it said. Whatever. We all know you don't get something for free, and we know the value of data. So what do you think they're doing when you're free? We all know that. We get it. Let's move on. Spend the $20, protect your IP, spend the $20 on Claude, protect your IP, and then get it done. And that's what you do. That's what you do. None of y'all, you've got to use this nuclear thinker, and you got to put it on a path and then extract that data and then be a superhero. That's how this all works.
Wow. Wow. You know, now listening to what you're saying, I'm thinking about how venture capitalists can use AI to help select the greatest companies as well.
Yeah. You know, and we look at product. Like, so when we look at product, people ask me all the time, manufacturers ask me all the time, okay, I understand what you're saying. And now I understand that I could make my employees a little bit better. I'm like, okay, probably make them a lot better than that, but okay. But I need to really protect my data. I really need to privatize my systems. I really need to do this. How do I do that? And you know, we get there. But the thing that some people sometimes think is they don't understand is, what is the use case? I get asked that all the time. So I wanted to share this with you guys. This is the use case for, these are just two examples, but these are the use cases where somebody could really, you know, with the approval of your company, you know, if your boss either gets you know, your own Claude or whatever it is, if they just let you start playing with this thing at work while you're in your cubicle and start like Joe did with his company, Biamp, which is a wonderful company. You know, if you start training wheels, baby step it, start getting your fingers into this thing, and you start loading stuff in, you start playing with stuff. A prime example would be, let's say your supply chain for a hospital. Okay, you can't put any IP in there, but what you could do is you can say, I want to know, based upon sentiment scores in the healthcare industry, who are the top 5 distributors of syringes in my region, right? And then they could start to use that in their job. And they didn't share any IP. They didn't do anything bad. Actually, it's great because now the hospital is benefiting from a supply chain person in procurement that's down in the basement. They now can do their job faster, and they can think freer, and they can follow the recommendations of other people, and they can say, all right, I'm going to call these two. And then it can go from there. And once they get into that habit of, you know, understanding the difference between AI and a search engine, it kind of takes off for them. And then they're going to come to the next level, which is, you know, this is great. I get to do this on outside third-party stuff, and it is making my job better. But I do now want to do that now with my own spreadsheets. I want to do that with our company data. Can I do that, please, IT? No. So hold on. We got to have a strategy around that. So, you know, but that's it. I mean, it's a progression. And for hospital employees and what I showed here, workflow optimization, you could absolutely do that. Nursing schedules, you could absolutely do that. There's a lot of cool things you can start doing in the right GPT today, right now, before you go home. And the reality of the new mindset starts to set in. Does that help?
That helps tremendously. And it makes me think about FAST as a medical device, because there's a lot of interoperability between hospital systems, healthcare systems in general. And AI, I believe, can help facilitate this even more.
It definitely can, especially when it comes to tech. You know, But when we talk to doctors, and when I've worked with them, I won't drag you through the whole story, but I recently had some family, challenges. My father had some surgery. My mother had a stroke, and I was there with ChatGPT in this situation because ChatGPT has a lot of access to a lot of information. Lots and lots and lots of people training that system. So I was literally sitting on a chair to the side as they were doing their consultations with us and my wife and all the people in the room. I was simply loading in all of the data into ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT is very assumptive. It's a very cool tool. And it comes back and says, do you want me to tell you what questions to ask? Do you want me to build a chart of all of the drugs that they're using? Do you want me to start to create a health plan that I would recommend that you could go over with the doctor? Boom, 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 boom. And 3 times during this 45-day period where both my parents were in hospitals, both of them in dire situations. They're not married anymore. They live in 2 different states. The bottom line is that 3 times doctors were like, oh, so you're a doctor. I wish you would have told me you were a doctor. I'm like, I'm not a doctor. He goes, oh, I thought you were in the industry. I was like, no. Now, the first doctor that said it to me, I said, oh, no, I'm using AI. His reaction was, bam, defensive. He doesn't know what I know. I get all this. I understand it. But the data and the facts are now well curated. We can have a conversation. But no, he wants to tell me how he's better than that. Okay. So I wasn't going to do that anymore. And so the second and third time it came up, I'm not a doctor. But, unfortunately, I've been around a lot of hospitals, and I work with a lot of manufacturers, and I know a little bit about a few things. And that's it. That's all you got to say. And the reality, though, is that both of my parents are still with us. Both of my parents are still doing great. And there was a lot of things in the care of my parents that me and my AI tool helped facilitate. And one of those was ChatGPT had picked up that they were going to do 2 drugs and compound them. And based upon the data that's out there, all the medical journals and everything out there, ChatGPT went out and saw it and came back and said, you got a conflict there. And then there was another thing, I can't remember exactly what it was something about physical therapy and something else. And so I'm loading in, they're going to do physical therapy, they're going to do this, they're going to do this. And there's ChatGPT saying, okay, hold on. These are the 5 things we got to look for. These are the 5 things you got to ask. And if depending upon the answer, you could have a conflict where he'll strain the wrong muscle. And it was pretty awesome. But think about this. Think about what the difference between using a Google situation, Google it, the parent stuff, and think about, doing a ChatGPT prompt. The reality of it is that a search engine, it's like a dog. Go fetch, and it goes fetches, and it brings you the bone and lays it at your feet. Then you've got to pick the bone up and analyze it, right? That's not what AI and a GPT does. It generates an answer. It generates an answer based upon multiple data points, and those multiple data points are very important. And you take all those data points, and then it generates an answer. And that's what we were doing. That's the difference between the two. So my Jarvis at that time, my medical Jarvis at that time, and me, the son of 2 parents that are on death's door, together we had a superhero moment where my mother has no physical effects from her stroke because we got her to the hospital. From the time she started to have her stroke to the time she went in for surgery, it had been 90 minutes total. So, there was certain quick little prompts that I talked to my agent on. I was like, this is the situation. What are we going to do? Boom, 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 boom. This is why you want to do it. I'm like, I'm done. 911, get it done, get it happening. So what that did, call an ambulance. So ChatGPT said, call an ambulance because you will make time. And I'm like, I didn't know what he meant, but I just did it because it was best practices that he had retrieved and generated to feed me in a moment of crisis. It's the same thing for business. It's the same thing for healthcare. For you guys, it's going to be really cool to be able to take a cool product like, in this case, it's a damn phone and AI, and you make it happen. But think of all of the different scenarios in healthcare where AI can be your assistant and help you cover a lot of things. And then it gets to the 20% where you got to make the call, where you got to do it. AI isn't going to do it. Should we do this surgery or that surgery? You guys know what you know what it's going to give you. It's going to give you, you could do A, you could do B. Have at it. Because AI doesn't know how to do both. And AI would say, and AI always says, but you need to consult a doctor. You do need to talk to a doctor. And why does AI say that? Because AI knows on some level that only the doctor can make that judgment call based on the pulse or how strong it is or weak. It doesn't have any of that data. So anyway, the bottom line is that when you look at the medical practice in AI, don't resist it, get into it, use it operationally, but also use it for your product, include it in your product to make all of those strands valuable. And that's a real live use case of how it would work in the medical world. That could have easily been a nurse doing the same thing I was doing, easily.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so happy that you had a happy ending for that and that your family is doing well and that you're able to use AI to help facilitate that. So I'm over the moon to hear a good report.
Me too.
So I'm also interested about how founders can use AI to help them fundraise, to help really identify who they should be talking to, why they should be talking to these particular VCs, and basically how to go about it. Because fundraising seems to be a difficult thing for most people. And it's not always because they don't like interacting with people, but oftentimes there's a lot of rejection there, right?
Yeah.
So you could talk to 100 people and maybe one person will say yes.
It's the whole sales game, right? I mean, it is. It's being persuasive. It's being, and a lot of entrepreneurs, they're introverts. It's crazy to say it, but not everybody's the Wolf of Wall Street, right? So how do you do that? Well, remember, if you have any gaps, there is probably an app for that. That's the first thing I would say. So tech is always, at the top of my mind. So check the tech. And then when you check the tech, make sure it has AI in it. But if I was coaching somebody on how to do funding, I would probably first tell them, remember what I just said. Do the research, right? And now Claude is not a great researcher. It's not a great researcher because the thing that makes it so secure also makes it very much of an introvert, so to speak, if you give it a personality. You want to go to Perplexity, which is the gossiper, the GPT around town, and go in there and say, I have a meeting with so-and-so, and they work for such and such, and give the details to it. I mean, you're not telling anything to Perplexity that it doesn't already know about this person. And say, so how would you play it? I'm not a salesperson. How would you play it? And have a conversation and do it. And then watch what happens. It'll come back and say, oh, this is so-and-so and such and such. And we went to the university of this and he went to the think of that. And okay, so if you were me, how would you play this? Oh, I would build a deck, but, I don't know if I'd build it too big, blah, blah, blah. All of these things, it's retrieving and vectoring and doing all this cool stuff and transforming into data for you. That's going to give you a good start. And then the second thing, though, is you're going to need a human. And if you can't deliver the human side, you may want to go grab somebody. You may want to go grab somebody that's really good at it. And there are lots of people out there. Kiratsu and all these guys, that's what they do. They take that sales part, that human part, that presentation part, and they're very, very good at it. And that's just one. There's quite a few out there. But, yes, they're going to want a piece of your action, but hold on. You don't have anything yet. And if it's a small percentage, you may want to do that. But let's say you don't want that one, but you want to do the first one. Okay, do the first one. And then you're going to have to do the human part, though. So you say, okay, this is a great plan. I love this plan. But now that I got to go talk in front of people, and God knows I don't like talking on people and cameras and a bunch of people looking at me, please tell me how to prepare for this, and it'll do it. And then please tell me what I should do to practice it, and it'll do it. And then please tell me the best way you would recommend best practices for somebody like me who's just getting into to go join Toastmasters Club. Oh, okay. And then you're going to have to train yourself how to do it, because there's no getting around it. There's just, remember one of my rules that I learned, from a friend of mine, there is the physical world. And if you physically can't do it, you're locking up, your throat gets tight, you're going to have to call in somebody else to do it. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to learn that quickly. You can't do it all yourself, and you're going to fail a bunch of times too, by the way. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But with AI in your back pocket, helping you and coaching you, giving you best practices from the globe, you got a lot better chance of a lot less dramatic losses. You'll take a few bumps and bruises, and you'll realize a lot about yourself. But you can use AI to speed up any gap, to fill any hole that you have. And if it doesn't do it directly, it'll make recommendations, and then it's up to you to execute. Because the humans always have to execute what AI comes up with, period.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. I'm wondering, we talked about what AI can do for us, but I'm curious about some of the misconceptions that we have about AI at the moment that you could clear up for us so that people can walk into using it with a lot of confidence.
Well, like what? Like, is there a question? Is there a particular comment? I can try and look myself, but is there something in particular that they're saying on a regular basis?
Well, we did talk about, for instance, job security. That's one type of misconception, right? There might be other types of misconceptions that could arise with AI. I remember you also mentioned iRobot being very important, and also the thought of bad actors in AI, where you have evil AI versus good AI.
Yeah, the balance. But you and I talked about this a little bit. Just again, my second rule is physical laws are physical laws, and the planet has a structure. It's a construct. But there is good and evil, and AI will be used by evildoers. It will be done. They're going to use it to steal your identity. They're going to use it to do all kinds of research. They're going to use it. We all know of the fraud that's already going on with AI. They're emulating actors' voices in it, and they're doing commercials illegally. They're emulating your mother's voice. They're trying to get you on the phone to record your mother's, or her on the phone to record her mother's voice, and then call. There's lots of these things happening, and unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And we look at the balance between good and evil, and the God construct, and all of these things that are important to people. It's going to happen, but how do you move forward? The biggest thing that I've said for a long time, for many decades, is fear is the enemy. Fear is the ultimate enemy. And we do understand that the word fear is in the Bible 365 times. We do know that. Now, I don't care what religion you're in. I don't care where you come from. I don't care if you're an atheist. But what I will tell you is that the people that were sitting down and writing that particular book, which is a very important book, you can't deny that, they mentioned fear and all the topics around fear 365 damn times. Forgive me. And so what is it? It's a core thing. Fear will hold any entrepreneur back, any business person back, any employee back. It is the one thing that will grip you. It's the one thing that'll hold you back. And so, yes, evil does exist. But if you embrace the fact that you have a strategy and you're going to do their best, and you are going to fail, you are not perfect. So get into AI. You will make mistakes. I have made mistakes. You will make mistakes. Everybody on this call will make mistakes. But you'll learn from it and you'll move on. And that's the key, is don't be afraid of AI. Don't be afraid of AI, because it's here. It's just not going away. You've gotten hundreds of millions of users. It's here. Now, there's a lot more to learn, everybody. You're not late to the game. I mean, we have a very, very small percentage of people that really understand what we're talking about yet. So if anything, don't wait for it to be commonplace, and don't wait for them to have everything cured up, because I'm telling you, the person that's going to take your job is the person who knows AI before you do. So set fear aside. Don't let it hold you back. And great things happen on the other side of that. That's where the gold is. It's the bigger the mountain, the bigger the payoff. I used to say that in my 20s, and the bigger the challenge with AI, the bigger the payoff. So just have fun with it. You're not going to be able to control everything, and you'll never be perfect. So it's okay. Let's move with the laws of physics, and let's go.
I love that. It reminds me of 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and self-control. So as we move forward, whatever religion another person is, that's what I believe. And I think AI is one of those things that it's a very powerful tool. And you have explained so much about how to use it, how to incorporate it in a startup. And I just wanted to end with you just telling people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing to do is find me on LinkedIn. So you can go to my LinkedIn page, which is Daren Fields, right? But you can go to darenfields.com, and you can see what I'm doing there as a value architect, and what I'm doing to drive. I think, I see some people on there, some friends of mine, Lauren and some other folks. I think that for a while there, it was trying to define some new roles in the AI era. And a lot of things that we see happening are a lot of boundaries and borders from the old days. So, an attorney had all of this knowledge and he charged you to get to it. That's why when I say there's no more secrets, that's what I'm talking about. I can draft some pretty damn good legal letters. Now, get somebody in front of a courtroom and a judge and a jury, that's a whole nother story. I got to have an attorney for that. But, when we look at that, so the roles in even running a business are different. And so I branded myself a value architect. And what does that mean? That means I look at all of these things and I architect value in a company. That's what I do. I come in and I look at it. If I'm working with Lauren, he's going to have me working in a certain spot in a certain division, more than likely. But we're still going to architect value. That's the first step. And that's looking at people, process, and tech. That's how value gets built. And then you got to execute. And the other thing that I do is I show people how to growth hack, how to get if they're on a plateau, if they're at the 20 million mark, which a lot of businesses are, and they got to go to the 50 or 100, I will reinvigorate them and launch them. If they're coming out of the angel fund, they're coming out of the VC fund and they need to get going, then I'll architect a path to value for them. And then of course I'll help them execute it and put it on automation. So that's what I do. I basically make companies into superheroes.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. We had a fantastic time speaking with you, Daren. This is a really powerful topic, and you are dynamic and you're doing a fantastic job bringing AI to the masses. And I look forward to partnering with you again.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful. And yes, you and I will be hanging out and we'll be talking more later.
Yes. And then also, if you guys have any guests that you would like to see on Purelite Ventures Presents, please feel free to let us know. We would be happy to discuss that with you and possibly have them on the show as well. And Callie is our fellow at Purelite Ventures, and you can reach out to her at ce@purelite.vc if you'd like to send a pitch deck. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.